Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, founder and president of the Pixel Project, and I'm moderating the fifth YouTube session of the ninth International Women's Day edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Now, through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 13 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project and violence against women and how to stop violence against women by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. Now, we have a really special guest with us today for the live Read for Pixels discussion and Q&A session, and it's the awesome contemporary romance author, Chloe Liese. And welcome, Chloe. Welcome to Read for Pixels. So Chloe writes romances reflecting her belief that everyone deserves a love story. Her stories pack a punch of heat, heart, and humor, and often feature characters who are neurodivergent like herself. When not dreaming up her next book, Chloe spends her time wandering in nature, playing soccer, and most happily at home with her family and mischievous cats. She is the author of the self-published BERGMAN Brothers series, which we'll be talking about today, and Two Wrongs Make a Right, which is her traditional publishing debut with Berkeley. And Chloe has also generously donated some super exclusive goodies for donors worldwide to the stash of author treats that we have up as perks for donors on the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. So let's talk a little bit about your goodies. So you have a starter book bundle for which you have personally assembled, and you'll sign and personalize it for one donor. So, that's just gorgeous. I think there are like 8 books in that bundle. And these are first edition paperbacks. And, if you get that bundle, you will have tons of love stories to read with happily ever afters and a smile on your face guaranteed. We were just talking about this with Chloe. Her books always bring a smile to our faces. And the bundle includes Only When It's Us, Always Only You, Ever After Always, With You Forever, Everything for You, If Only You, The Mistletoe Motive, which would be a great one to reserve for the Christmas season at the end of the year. And her latest book that's coming out soon, and Chloe will talk a little bit about it a little later in the session, and it's called Two Wrongs Make a Right. And we can see it behind Chloe. Great red book behind Chloe. Yeah. And also for romance authors, the budding romance authors, Chloe has a critique bundle available. And so if you're a budding romance or novice romance author looking for professional critique of your work, Chloe's offering the chance for one Read for Pixels donor to have your work in progress critiqued. And this special bundle includes one critique of your first chapter of your romance whip, one critique of your query letter draft, because query letters can be really tricky, really, really tricky. They should only be like one page, and you have to get everything on it. And it's an art, writing query letter. And Chloe will also answer 3 to 5 questions in a follow-up email if you have them after you've read through the critique of both the chapter and the query letter draft. So you get extended feedback on this if you're looking for something like this. Now, important note, this bundle is for English language romance works only. We do have other bundles where the author is bilingual, like Romina Garba, who has a package for either English or Spanish writers, Spanish language writers. But Chloe's one is for English language writers only, so keep that in mind. Now, we have had a very slow start to our fundraiser. We've just raised $970 so far towards our $5,000 goal, and it's already week 2. So please give generously before the fundraiser ends on 15th of April 2023. And all funds will go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women, including this program, the Read for Pixels program. And now, before Chloe begins her reading, Just a reminder to everybody, if you're watching this right now and you would on YouTube and you would like to ask Chloe questions, make sure you're logged into your YouTube account. Otherwise, you can't type anything into the chat box. And Xiao Chin, who is today's producer and YouTube moderator, will relay the questions to me to put them on screen and read out to Chloe to answer. So just make sure that you're signed in. So now I'm handing things over to Chloe. Chloe will be reading a short excerpt from one of her books. So Chloe, what will you be reading for us today?
I just want to say first, thank you again for having me, Regina. I'm really honored to be a part of this initiative. So I'm going to be reading from Two Wrongs Make a Right, which debuted this past November. And the next book in this series comes out the next fall, October of this year. And that is a retelling of Taming of the Shrew. So Two Wrongs Make a Right is a loose reimagining of Much Ado About Nothing. The main trope for you romance readers is fake dating. And Jamie and Bea have both been through tough relationships. Jamie was with someone who pretty much cast him aside as soon as he wasn't someone who suited her interests. She dumped him in a pretty callous way. Bea went through something that touches much closer to the heart of the Pixel Project. She went through significant emotional abuse with her previous partner. So fake dating has felt like something she can handle doing because it's not real and she feels like she's safe and protected. So the excerpt I'm going to read is from, as you can see, pretty far into the story. And it's when Bea's starting to realize she's attracted to Jamie and she wants to maybe try to take a little bit of a risk with him, but she sort of drops this suggestion to him at the end of the previous chapter. Like, well, what if we were like fake dating, but sort of, like slept together if we wanted? We're attracted to each other, right? And from Jamie's perspective, he's thinking, oh man, I'm really starting to fall for this woman and that's all she wants from me. So it's that moment when the things aren't feeling so fake anymore in a fake relationship. And they're both trying to work through their vulnerabilities about, can I take the risk and be vulnerable and feel safe and try to make this real? So they are on a date at a place called Paint to Your Heart's Content, which is one of those. This is pretty common in the United States. Like you go and paint together. If you're amateur, you just sort of follow the model painter and try to replicate it. And you have a couple glasses of wine and it's sort of silly. So this is one of their fake dates that they take pictures of and post to Instagram to convince people, hey, we're together, we're dating. So, but as I said, they're both processing these sort of watershed moments of realizing that they care about each other a lot more than people in a fake relationship probably should. So without further ado, I'm going to read. And you're going to hear about a character, Grace. She owns Paint to Your Heart's Content, and she's the main painter who's like facilitating their paint evening. Chapter 25, Bea. I had to do it. Blurt what I've been thinking since Friday night in the worst possible way. I didn't mean only sex, but I wasn't exactly sure what else I meant either. Because I'm scared to admit that I daydream about being with Jamie, about him really being mine, not just on Instagram or at house parties, not just during painting dates and in overheated conservatories and at the bowling alley, 24/7, for real. Thank goodness I stumbled on my words. Thank goodness he reacted the way he did, because when we talk after this, he'll explain that he doesn't do casual, and he certainly won't ask me for more, which will suck, but at least I'll have been spared making a fool of myself for a man who's all wrong for me. Again. Honestly, you'd think I'd have learned by now to see an arrangement for what it is, rather than what it could be. I blame this terrible lapse in judgment on Grace and her romantic aura, which thickens the air more than the heady jasmine and amber incense wafting around us. Stare deeply into your lover's eyes, Grace calls, as if we're in Carnegie Hall instead of a narrow shop front. Jamie peers over at me, pressing his glasses up his nose. I stare back at him. Excellent, Grace says. This is a vital step in our evening. Now we open ourselves wide and forge the bonds that deepen our erotic energy. Jamie's eyes widen, then shut as he inhales slowly through his nose. I bite my lip and remind myself of the time my little sister Kate stuck hot sauce in the ketchup on my plate and my tongue was on fire for hours. It barely keeps me from laughing. We open ourselves, Grace says, to our partner's love by breathing fully from our heart chakra. She puts a hand over her heart and holds her partner's gaze. He might have glanced my way earlier, but he only has eyes for her now. The heart chakra, Grace says, or anahata, translates roughly to unhurt. This is the place within us that unlocks our capacity for love, compassion, and forgiveness for ourselves and others. Jamie's eyes meet mine, and every drop of hilarity drains between us. Examining our love, Grace says, contemplating how our heart will guide our brush, we open ourselves to a fuller appreciation of the one before us, for the healing energy they bring to our lives. Old wounds have no place in our hearts now, no place for hurt in the unhurt space. Surely we are none of us strangers to pain, she says, but tonight we create and connect from the newness of an open heart that does not beat for fear, but instead finds itself stretched as a fresh canvas, ready to be altered by the beauty of the one we love. Let us begin. Breaking our gaze, Jamie and I turn to face our canvases. A blank canvas is always a daunting thing, but right now that white rectangle feels more than daunting. It feels like a rip in the universe about to suck me into God knows where. This newness Grace talked about, this fresh start, it's staring back at me, and I'm scared shitless. My heart beats faster than even faster. A cold sweat dampens my skin. Via, Jamie asks, are you all right? I nod, staring at the canvas. I'm envisioning my approach. Lie, such a lie. I'm being petrified is what I'm being. I sit there for long minutes, fiddling with paint colors, mixing countless shades of amber and peach and green, anything but putting paint to canvas. I try a few times, swirling my brush, wetting it with paint and lifting it in the air. But then my arm freezes, and my heart starts pounding again. So back to color mixing I go until I have more colors than room on my palette. By this point, I'm holding my breath, waiting for Jamie to ask what's going on, to take offense that I'm not participating or prod me for an explanation. But he only glances my way a few times before his eyes swiftly return to his canvas. And how are we doing? Grace asks. How's our heart's expression on canvas progressing? This woman, she is something. Jamie's right. I am a little bit of an art snob, but I'm not cruel. Grace clearly loves her business and its heartbeat for bringing people together through painting. I don't fault her for that. Hell, I admire it. I've just turned into a cynic who hasn't touched a paintbrush in almost 2 years and is now really scared to do that, because then what? What if painting makes me feel the way it used to? Like my heart's in my hands, pouring itself out with each stroke of my brush. Like life's deepest meanings and truest truths can be captured in light and shadow in the daunting work of good perspective. What if that feeling turns my heart as soft and tender as it once was? And what if someone once again crushes it in their grip? Going fine, thank you, Jamie tells her after my awkward silence, because the guy is constitutionally incapable of being rude. Your efforts are... Grace clears her throat and tips her head, staring at Jamie's canvas, which is hidden from me. Very commendable. Jamie adjusts his glasses and frowns at his painting. You can say it. Visual art is not my gift. No, Grace agrees, but your heart is in there, in every stroke. That's the real gift. And you, she says to me, stepping up behind my canvas. My blank canvas. Oh. Her eyes widen. She peers at me over her red-framed cat-eye glasses, tiny bubblegum pink hearts at the hinges winking in the overhead lights. What is this, my dear? It's... A knot forms in my throat. It's been a while since I did this, I whisper. Her gaze searches mine. I'm not a big fan of prolonged eye contact. It gives me the sense that my soul's being excavated and my skin's being stung by a swarm of bees, so I let her look for only a moment before I stare down at my boots. Is there hurt tied to the act of painting? She asks. It just kicks up a lot of feelings. Ah, yes, she says gently. We paint from our hearts, and when our hearts have been hurt, our art can hurt too. Yes, I manage around the growing lump, thickening my voice. Nothing but melodramatic string music fills the air until Grace says, Are you ready to try again? Picking up the brush I have yet to do anything with but spin in 36 shades of primary colors, she examines it. I peer up at her, my eyes blurring with tears. I think so. It's just that starting, that first step, it's really scary. I know. She nods and smiles gently. I know that very well. But if your heart wants it, then you can do it. I promise. She places the brush in my hand. Blank canvas, fresh paint, courageous heart. You're ready. Grace pats my shoulder gently. Now, back to my fresh canvas. And that's it.
Oh, that was great. Grace made me giggle. I muted myself so no one can hear me giggle.
In the previous chapter, when they first walk in, and I forgot to mention that it's like, it's not just they're painting together. This is like an erotic painting exercise to fall more deeply in love with your partner, but I'm sure the context gave that away. But so it's high romance when they walk in there, and when they first walk in, it's like whale noises. Thea, who has a lot of sensory processing struggles, is like, I can't handle this. So Jamie asks Grace very sweetly, because he's Jamie. He's like, would you mind please changing the music? And she's like, she doesn't like the sounds of the whale mating and calling to each other. Like, it's just, Grace is over the top ridiculous. But obviously she's very passionate about second chances and healing and hope and love. So yeah, that was one of my favorite moments to write in this story.
And I'm looking forward to reading it. So let's start with the discussion, and the audience questions are coming in as well. So everyone in the audience will fit. We're going to be discussing different aspects of Chloe's work in relation within the context of violence against women, sexism, and misogyny. And genre and all, and just leave your questions, and we'll fit your questions in wherever they sort of fit in with the discussion. Don't worry, we'll get to as many questions as possible. So let's begin. So Chloe, all your stories feature very relatable and very human female protagonists such as Rooney, Freya, Frankie, and Willa, who are all independent, resourceful, and compelling women with agency, who do their best with the cards that they are dealt with in life. Now, who or what are the inspiration behind your female characters?
Well, I am surrounded by a community of women who, not all of them have been dealt particularly great cards, but they have leaned into the power of sisterhood and building a found family with your friends. So I've been there for these women, and they've been there for me, and they've taught me so much about whether it's health or abuse or strife in their family, whether it's heartache within their communities, that there is so much power in being vulnerable and open with each other, in what you need, and also looking within yourself and trusting yourself to be strong even when you don't think you can, or when the world's told you you can't be. So I'm deeply inspired by the women in my life. I've drawn within myself and my own experiences and what I've gone through. And just that I think it's so important to show women who aren't perfect, but who have resilience, who deal with hard things, and yet know how to reach out and ask for help, who know how to look within themselves and learn, sometimes more so, to believe in themselves and what they're capable of. I also am a mother of 2 daughters, and every book I write, when they're much older, I want them to, if they want to pick up and read it, I want them to read it, and I want them to be proud of me, and I want them to be seeing the messages that I have raised them with, which is that they are strong in their open hearts, that they are worthy of equal opportunity and respect, that uplifting women is the only way. We lift each other all up. We don't bring other women down. We don't perpetuate, patriarchal standards of, violence and power playing. So I just am really passionate about writing stories that capture my beliefs for myself, the community I'm surrounded with, and the way I'm raising my girls.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's something we all need to remember, actually, because sometimes our worst enemies are ourselves. Our worst enemy is ourselves, where we don't lift up other women. So, like any other genre, romance has its fair share of female stereotypes and tropes. So, in navigating chronic health issues, it's probably not a stretch, and neurodiversity is probably not a stretch to deduce that the risk of stereotyping is tripled when genre, gender, and ableism intersect. How and why did you decide to focus on non-traditional heroines?
Well, because I think, as when you read my intro, my ethic as a writer is that I want to write stories affirming that I believe all of us deserve. All of us who want that happily ever after, we deserve it. And we deserve to see that reflected in love stories. So I lean into that belief. And that's where, again, these are often the representation of chronic illnesses, disabilities, neurodivergence, past traumas, and healing journeys. They're informed by people I love and know. They're informed by my own lived experience. And I think it's just really, really important to show that you're worthy of love when you go through that. Like, you don't have to have some picture perfect story to get to ride off into the sunset with someone who loves you. Like, you deserve someone who loves you for all of things, simply because they're a part of you and your journey, that love you for them, not in spite of those things. So I'm also a highly character driven writer. So I think it's a little bit easier to lean into stereotypes when you're really heavy into the plot and you're kind of shoehorning your leads into beats. And that's not to say that you can't write really complex characters with really, flashy plots. There are great books with wonderful hooks and strong plots that have incredibly nuanced characters. But I will say that for me, because so much of my storytelling is driven by voice and point of view and the nuances of my characters, I wouldn't have much to work with if I stereotyped. So I love to lean into, when I'm building my characters, questions like, what's a lie that they believe about themselves or the world? And what's a truth that they have to learn about themselves and other people to heal, to grow, to fall in love in this way that affirms their growth and their healing. And I also am writing stories where I really don't want to reflect codependence. Like, I want to show healthy interdependent relationships. So I'm working really hard to develop two love interests who are both on growth journeys. And I'm simply trying to show you how their falling in love takes them, like, supports that journey that they're going on, but isn't like the reason for it. So you can't, again, like, I wouldn't be able to really develop that very well if I was leaning into stereotypes. I want to show people who feel like someone you could know and love, that or maybe they feel like you, and that's rare and new and special, and you're cheering them on and you're happy to see them being loved for who they are and finding a happily ever after for who they are too.
Yeah. So, because you write non-traditional heroines, do you ever receive any pushback from romance readers who aren't used to a more diverse range of heroines beyond the stereotype of the beautiful white heroine who, doesn't have any disabilities, doesn't have any chronic pains and ills? And how have you addressed those objections?
Well, I tend to lean toward the side of the death of the author thing, that once my book is out of my hands, it's for readers to do with what they will. So I try not to dialogue, honestly, with critique. I like to just let that be a space for readers to engage each other. That said, I actually haven't been even made aware of, like, tagged in many reviews that are critical of that aspect of how I'm writing kind of realistic heroines nowadays. Now, when I first started writing the Bergmans, like these first two, the green and the aqua ones, Willa is someone who's gone through a ton of trauma and is like actively losing her only parent to terminal illness. And she's got huge emotional walls up, and she's a hothead. She's a strong personality who's got her guard up. And then there's Frankie. I'm like trying to find my direction. There's Frankie and Always Only You, and she is autistic, and she has rheumatoid arthritis and uses a mobility aid. And she manages the professional hockey team for LA's social media. She's like their in-game social media coordinator. And I definitely got some people being like, Willa's, the first heroine, she's so difficult. She should have been all the things that we say about women who are like, not just being easy and, doormats. And then with Frankie, like a couple people were like, oh, someone who's autistic couldn't possibly do social media. Whereas I am autistic and I have 22,000 followers on Instagram. So I think it can be done. So, you're definitely going to you're going to encounter people who don't have open minds to these things. But thankfully, the longer I've gone, more so, wonderfully, I generally just hear from people who are really touched and thankful and moved by seeing someone who looks like them or someone they love, or just some part of that feel like they feel safe when they come into my stories. Like, it's okay to be that I'm a person who's got stuff going on in my life and hardships, but love happens, and intimacy and desire and joy and healing happens. So I think I've just sort of found my readers, and that's what I tend to just feel very grateful for and focused on. And they're the people that these books are for. So yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Willa, she's hot-headed, right? So I was actually reading a couple of other romance books where the heroine is also hot-headed.
Yeah.
And there is such a huge difference between the way you write it and the way the other author writes it. And I was wondering why, because, you know, Willa literally sees red, right, when she gets really angry. And
Yeah.
it's the same with the other heroines. But and then I wonder, well, what's the difference? And then it just occurred to me that the difference is how their love interest, the man, approaches their anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ryder approaches her anger. I mean, at first there was all that misunderstanding, but after that, he approaches her anger very, very differently from the way the other heroes approach the anger, and I think that makes a lot of difference.
Well, I think that's talking about the importance of why I writing women and then showing men capable, within a heterosexual relationship. Obviously, women, men, and men. But in this situation, showing a woman like Willa who has a deep pain that she's actively navigating while she's experienced a lot of pain in her past and a lot of fear about emotional vulnerability. Ryder's grown up in a very emotionally intelligent, stable, secure, and if we're talking like attachment styles, like a secure attached family, he has an emotional vocabulary. And he recognizes that Willa is an avoidant, that she is terrified of intimacy, and he's patient with her. He has compassion for her. He doesn't let her walk all over him. He sticks up for himself. He pushes back. He tells her when he wants more or how he's feeling about their relationship. He doesn't just like lie down and give up, but he is gentle with her and he's patient in a way that were genders reversed in, very traditional like heteronormative romances. Men act like that all the time in romances, and women are always like, oh yes, of course, I will emotionally accommodate you. And we wouldn't bat an eye about that, but it is sort of rare for a female character to be like Willa and for a male character to be like Ryder. But I was aware I was writing a very tempestuous, hot-headed woman, and I was really important to me to show why she is the way she is and to show someone loving her, to show her best friend Rooney, to show Ryder's family, to show her mother, to show Ryder having compassion for her as an exercise of empathy for the reader, to be, whether it's toward other women when they're having difficulties or when they're fired up and they're impassioned, to have curiosity and empathy for them. Or even when we recognize that within ourselves, instead of acting on our internalized misogyny and shaming ourselves for that, let that fire breathe, embrace it, have compassion for it, engage it. So it's important to me to write those kinds of characters because I think it's important for us to be better about seeing and making space for women to operate that way.
Yeah, and hold that thought about Ryder. We'll talk about your male characters a little later. Do you ever feel pressured by cultural and social expectations to make your female characters likable? I mean, I find them likable, but do you ever feel that pressure? Because some female authors do, and we've heard horror stories from a few other Read for Pixels female authors.
I this is one of the ways where I feel like I mean, there's lots that I love about being neurodivergent. I think there's incredible gifts to my brain. I also recognize its struggles and its pitfalls, but I do think one of the things I'm most grateful for, recognizing that I don't often, and this is quite common, though I'm not going to speak for everyone. I don't represent the totality, obviously, of autistic women. It's fairly common for autistic women to just not really absorb a lot of those kinds of social pressures, and we're just not generally absorbing them or observing them. So we're kind of just like la di da, we're gonna do what we want, and that's how I have felt. Like there are so many people who write great, like I would just say like standard in the bell curve type characters in romances. And that's great. And that's wonderful. It's just, that's not the story I need to tell. And those aren't the stories I need to read. So I don't feel pressure to write any specific kind of heroine or make her particularly likable. I think no, I don't think I know. What I'm always trying to do when I create stories is is to humanize these characters. And I think because I'm always, whether I'm working through something within myself and drawing on my lived experience and then pouring that into the page, or I'm working with my authenticity sources who are friends, who are parts of my communities, they are deeply human. Like right off the bat, my characters are based off of, because this is my process. I get all of my research done into any of the conditions and representations I'm going to write before I even begin to write. So I'm never shoehorning representation retroactively into a character. It is it is the foundation of this character. And I just think I can't help but write people who just feel like real people that I have compassion for as I write their journeys, and I hope I engender and encourage empathy and compassion for in my readers. So even if they're not really someone who's terribly relatable to the reader, there's someone that my reader can root for and maybe learn a little something about, or develop like a deeper appreciation or respect for or understanding for a condition or experience that's outside of their exposure otherwise.
Yeah. So speaking of female characters, your books definitely pass the Bechdel test with your depiction of complex and interesting relationships between women, including family relationships and female friendships. So we have Willa and Rooney, and we have Eileen. Eileen, is it Eileen who's the matriarch of the family? And we have scenes where like Ziggy is talking with Frankie, and they're talking about how Ziggy's neurodivergence is different from Frankie's, and Frankie has been through the whole journey, further along the journey, and she explains to Ziggy about, you might want to ask for this and that. And everyone, if you don't know what the Bechdel test is, it's, two women, female characters in a film or book or TV series are talking about something other than men, and it really boggles our minds, that how is it difficult to write that? I mean, women talk about a lot more things in our everyday lives that don't ever refer to men. I mean, we talk about the kids, we talk about the dogs, we talk about, what we're cooking for. And somehow, oops, sorry everyone, my laptop seems to be playing up. Can you hear me, Chloe?
Yep, I can hear you. You were quiet for just like a couple seconds, but you're back.
Okay, so hold on, everyone. All right. So my laptop is acting up today. Sorry, everybody, if you just saw the bottom half of you saw below my neck. My computer is really weird today. So anyway, the Bechdel test. It's all about seeing if a work of art actually has two women talking about something other than men. So what can you suggest for romance writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically or plausibly, especially since a lot of the time we just get really focused, especially in heteronormative romances, we just get really focused on the couple, and everything is the woman thinking about the man, the woman talking about the man. But in your books, it's different. We get these conversations like the one between Frankie and Ziggy. What would your recommendations be to romance authors who want to make sure that they have that in their books?
I would say focus on your characters and know your characters' growth arcs and their journeys as individuals when you're writing, and focus on how you need to focus on moments and scenes that you can write that show your reader, not tell them, but show them how this person is learning and growing about themselves, about their perception of the world, about their perception of its possibilities or their possibilities. Like, so I tend to, and I also just think I would encourage you to represent more than just the romantic relationship as like the only way you can explore love and healing in a romance. Like, I think it's so beautiful, and I think it creates a more inclusive and welcoming space, especially for folks for whom maybe romantic relationships aren't like their number one focus or goal or even interest, but just really enjoy the joy and happiness and guaranteed happy ending of a romance novel. Like, if you can explore family love and friend love and found family love, and just make time on page and use those opportunities to show your reader who your character is, how just to show them the development of this person along the way. I think it makes for a really rich reading experience. I don't think it detracts at all from ultimately telling like a really satisfying romance. And I think it's great to give your love interests some breathing space from each other so that they're not always together or always thinking about each other, because that's not terribly healthy and it's not realistic. unrealistic. It's good to show them with their friends, with their family, over dinner, working out, going for a walk, sitting down and having a tough conversation. I think it really builds their complexity and nuance and relatability.
Yeah, and it also helps, I think, if you're writing a multi-book series, because you have to, foreshadow and other characters as they're coming up in the next books and things like that. Um,
Definitely.
so uh, let's talk about men. Having talked about the Bechdel test, now let's talk about your male characters. So anyway, to set the scene, for context, over the past 10 to 15 years, the hero in many romance books has significantly evolved, and we are seeing a far wider range of not just heroes but also male supporting characters as well. Your male protagonists and characters are a prime example of that, from Dr. Alex Bergman, the patriarch of the family who took his wife's last name and is openly affectionate with his sons and son-in-law, to Ren Bergman, who is very good at emotional regulation, and Vigo Bergman, who is a romance novel addict. We love Vigo. So now, what is extremely striking about the entire Bergman Brothers series is that it features some pretty meta discussions by the characters themselves about the challenges of avoiding toxic masculine behavior and the importance of role modeling healthy masculinity. Now, I'm a longtime romance reader, starting from my teens, and this is the first time I've come across a romance series that literally tackles this issue head on and does it with so much heart and good humor. Now, why do you decide, the way you set it up, why did you decide to create an entire family of men who are feminists and who walk their talk? They're not just saying, oh, I'm feminist and that's it. They actually are feminist.
Well, because I think it's important to romanticize that. Like I have even had conversations with friends of mine about the difference in what we grew up kind of being spoon fed was desirable in a man, and what we're starting to realize we appreciate in male partners now. Like, even like one friend said, like, if a boy asked me when I was in high school, like if he could kiss me, I was like, you should just kiss me. Like, you're not a man if you're not just taking what you want. You know what I mean? Whereas now we're like, oh my God, the beauty and the value and the importance of continual consent. Like, you know, this gets reflected in art all the time and in books. One of my favorite quotes is from Oscar Wilde, and it's from one of his essays. And he's being a little tongue in cheek, but I really do think he meant it. And he says, um, "Life, art imitates life much more than art imit like wait." Life imitates art much more than art imitates life, right? Like the classic is that, art is an expression of what we are, but like life comes to art. People turn toward art for guidance, and we're influenced by it, by media, by representations of gender and identity, and the lack of representation of healthy behaviors, or treatment of other people. It makes a difference. It affirms things for the worse, or it subdues things that we need to celebrate. And so I wrote this big family of again, like I'm someone who finds the attachment theories, of secure, anxious, or avoidant pretty compelling. So I would say that I've written a secure attached family with people, two parents who have a healthy, not perfect, but a healthy communicative relationship, and have raised their children to be safe to emote, to express their feelings, to be vulnerable, right? And so is it a bit idyllic? Yeah. But I do also know men who, some of whom did grow up in that really rare, lovely, secure family, or in others of whom later in their life have been like, I want to be able to talk about my feelings, and I want to be able to have strong, emotionally vulnerable relationships with men, with my partner. So I want to put that out there and affirm it for the women who are looking for men in their lives, to say, okay, this is something good and healthy and right. And I'm not off my rocker for wanting, or I'm not out of touch, or being unreasonable, excuse me, to expect this, and to celebrate the men who have done that work, or who are sort of the good guys. We say the good guys never win. Like, well, the good guys win in my world. And I want to celebrate what is probably somewhat aspirational, but ultimately something I think is really healthy and what men deserve, which is to be emotionally intelligent, communicative people who can emote and be vulnerable and open and support their partners and allow themselves to receive support in healthy ways. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, what you've done is you've reframed how your stories describe men, and you've pivoted away from hostile and toxic stereotypes, and you've marched everyone towards complexity and vulnerability. Um, do you think this is one of the techniques that romance writers can use to break away from these harmful tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women?
Yeah. And I know some people will say like it's just fiction. It doesn't really matter. I just want to read what I want to read. And like and okay, that that's fine. For me though, I need what I write to reflect what I value. And I think I do try to do this in the series is to have these guys talk about these pressures. Whether it's Ren talking about like how he has been hurt and humiliated and frustrated and he could have lashed out and he could have been the very stereotypical like bad boy, rowdy, violent hockey player, but he's not. He's non-violent. He uses Shakespeare to vent, Shakespearean oaths, but he communicates that struggle, right? Or Aiden, who's grown up in incredible poverty and feels so much pressure to like typify that like successful, strong financial man, and he has a whole conversation with his brothers-in-law about how that doesn't actually make you more valuable or more of a man. Like I'm trying to honor the pressures that men receive in our culture, and that when they internalize unhealthy ways of dealing with it are really toxic, and when they push them back out into other people make for toxic relationships. So yeah, I'm trying to push back against that in a way that calls an awareness to these narratives that perpetuate toxicity within men and within their relationships to each other and to women, and even to how women relate to and expect men. So I want to push for healthier dialogue about identity and self-worth and how we process those very real pressures of what our culture, our kind of cultural dictates and units of measurement and value and worth are. And I think that's why the big cast, the big found family cast in the Bergman series is so effective and important, is because it's all these people taking turns showing each other in different moments in just the right way. Hey, you're valuable because you're a person and you're here and you don't have to do anything else, right? And just breaking down all those messages of conditions of self-worth that hurt us and then can make us turn and want to hurt other people through that.
Yeah. So we're gonna start fitting in uh, audience questions starting from now on, because we're moving into the topics that the audience have asked about. So
Okay.
everyone, I'm just gonna let everyone know that I'm not gonna be sharing the questions strictly according to the first person who asked, the second person who asked, not in that order. We'll fit that in according to where the discussion is going. So here we go. So let's start with Carly B. So she asks, how much do you think about gender dynamics when writing the mixed gender Bergmans versus the Wilmot sisters?
I can't say I think too much about gender dynamics in general, honestly, and that is at least not cognizantly. It's not like front and center in my brain. So really, I would say, in the difference between the Berkmans and the Wilmot sisters, the three Wilmot sisters have a very complex relationship to each other that's messy, and it isn't sort of like pie in the sky. We're three sisters and yay, it's so fun and happy. It's like they've hurt each other, they've misunderstood each other, they've been distant from each other, they have to get to know each other again. So there's a lot of complexity. And that's definitely what happens in the Bergmans. Siblings confront each other, they miss each other, they're longing to connect with each other, they have old grudges about things and they got to duke it out sometimes. So really in both of the series, I'm really just leaning into writing characters who feel real and nuanced and in depth, and writing just human to human relationships that feel messy, but ultimately aspiring toward emotional safety and respect and growth and healing. I really love writing those complexities because they feel real. And without those moments of conflict and past pain and a desire to be better and closer, you don't, there's not a lot other than just the beats of falling in love in a romance. And I love showing how that's the reality of our lives, is all these beautiful and complex and messy relationships that make it rich and dynamic. So that's really what I focus on, I would say, equally and with equal joy in both series.
Okay, so let's talk about genre. So the romance genre is the biggest selling genre today, but it has been criticized for being anti-feminist, for providing unrealistic portrayals of sexual and romantic relationships, and of glorifying toxic relationships. So while situations like rape and domestic violence are clearly non-consensual, the usual romantic encounters in romance books have not always made the line between consent and coercion clear. Do you think that this is an issue that romance writers have started tackling successfully in recent years?
I do. I think there's definitely corners of the romance writing community that aren't necessarily very interested in addressing that or changing it, and that's their purview. But I do think I'm seeing much more so in contemporary romance, especially in like rom-coms. Funny enough, that these sort of happy stories are actually digging a lot into like emotional vulnerabilities and physical vulnerabilities, and writing the importance of consent and continual consent, and not making assumptions about what people desire or want in terms of intimacy or even their orientation, like just making a much more safe space for showing that healthy intimacy is about communication, and it's about continual consent, and it's about making safety for both parties, or however many parties, to be freely open about what they need to feel safe and to be happy with what they're doing. So I do think we're moving more in that direction, and I personally think it is important. I know it's healing for me as a person to read that, and I struggle to read portrayals that are not robust and clear on consent. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, more and more prevalent, and I think it's a great thing.
Okay. So we have a question from the audience, Jillian Tetrick. Hi, Jillian. Thank you for patiently waiting for your question to be put on. Jillian says, hi, Chloe. What do you think about people saying that reading romance creates unrealistic expectations?
Well, I would say that's a reflection more on a shortcoming of our culture or our expectations. Unrealistic as in, well, maybe it doesn't reflect what we've been told we should expect. But I don't think that means that it's bad. Like I was saying earlier, that, life imitating art much more than art imitating life. Like, I think we need to keep putting this out there over and over again. I mean, I know that there have been some people in my life who read romance for the first time, and men who were deeply moved by that, the by showing a female gaze, like appreciating these parts of masculinity that they didn't grow up seeing affirmed or told was like sexy or desirable or strong. And it's like, it's healing for men too, to see good, kind men asking for continual consent, honoring a woman's body and her needs, to see that affirmed. And I think it's incredibly important for women, or honestly just any genders here. I don't need to make this so heteronormative. Just, I think it's so important for us to write romance stories showing people being good to each other, respecting each other, asking for consent, getting to know each other, just treating each other as people with dignity and with honor. And I think we have a lot about our news cycle, right? Like just the general phenomenon of how we talk about what happens in the world. The negatives are much more prevalent, right? But I think there are a lot of people out there who are looking to connect with other people in these vulnerable, scary, tender ways. And I think if more people picked up romance novels that celebrated that, the laughing and the fumbling and the scaries and the goofy moments and the awkwardness, and saw that can be celebrated and beautiful, and it's realistic, I think that would encourage people, and it would make them feel safe in the reality of like, well, that's how that's gone for me. Okay, well, that's just how it goes, right? So yeah, I don't think it's unrealistic. I think it just pushes against the mainstream narrative that I don't think is actually representative of the majority of behaviors or relationships, but it's just kind of what we've been told for a long time. So I say we just keep writing it and keep reading it and keep sharing it and keep championing that narrative. And I hope that will ultimately be the one that wins out.
Okay, so we do have one more question about genre. So, what can romance as a genre teach other genres about writing about violence against women, sexism, and misogyny?
Well, historically, more so than other genres, but not exclusively. Romance has made space for the female gaze, as we would call it. And again, it is not only the female gaze in romance at all by far, but compared to other genres, it has been a space much more devoted to that. And I think what other genres could take away from it is a chance to step inside a woman's perspective, and or just to build a world seeing women in which we humanize them, where we respect their autonomy, their consent, their totality, and not use tired tropes like women tearing other women, and petty jealousy and acts of vengeance, where we don't glorify violence by or against women. I think we could just to tell the genre, like, let's get modern, let's catch up, in the way that I think romance really is moving and shifting, and in such a positive and healing way, and a feminist way.
Yeah, and I think having, like I said earlier, I've been reading romance since I was a teenager, and there's like this huge change that has been coming over the last 2 decades or so.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about Lisa Kleypas earlier, and even within single authors, not just Lisa's books, but many other romance authors who have been there for the last 20, 30 years. Like if you read their books, you can see the changes taking place, reflecting how cultural and social conversations go about consent, about violence against women, about sexism, about misogyny, and all of that. And we land up, I think, in a pretty good place right now. Like you said, that romance is doing a lot better now with handling issues like consent and coercion and things like that. So we have one last question from the audience, and then we'll go to our final questions for the day. So Misty306, hi Misty. Misty is one of our longtime viewers, and she's also a librarian over on the West Coast. And Misty asks, you mentioned your romance books are based on historical classic tales, yet you wouldn't know it unless you told us. Should inspiration from previous books continue to be in the framework in writing?
I'm not sure exactly. So I think I'm hearing just that you personally wouldn't have known what it's inspired by unless you're told. So should inspiration from previous books continue to be the framework in writing? I mean, I can't speak for all writing. In writing this series for Berkeley, where they're all riffs on Shakespeare plays, I'm really interested in engaging with like the themes, the fundamental messages, and some of the bigger plot points in the plays, and digging into those in a modern with a modern feminist lens. So like for instance, in this first book, if for people who are familiar with Much Ado, you might recognize that there's the Benedict and Beatrice characters, but then there's the secondary kind of idealized romantic couple, Jean-Claude and Juliet. And they look like they're having this like dreamy relationship at first, but what it really ends up being revealed as like a deeply toxic relationship where he is emotionally abusive to her. And that was my commentary on In Much Ado. Claudio slanders Hero, and just like she just forgives him at the end, and then they're like happily ever after. And that plot point is set up by Don John, the villain. So I put Claudio and Don John and Claudio, Jean-Claude, and made a commentary on how there is villainy in what Claudio does, and Shakespeare didn't do anything about it, but I get to. So I'm playing with themes and beats. And it's mentioned in the back copy. It's in the reader question. So I hope it's a story that for people who aren't Shakespeare interested or experienced, they can just enjoy a fun story that hopefully feels safe and happy and uplifting. And for the Shakespeare nerds among us, they can go, oh, here were some fun parallels or diversions, or I see where she was going with that. And it's sort of like a bonus. But yeah, it's just, I love Shakespeare. I grew up loving the plays, but I think there's also, they're 400 or 500 centuries old, and a lot's changed. And it's fun to engage with these sort of big touchstones in cultural literacy, right? And have a conversation with them.
Okay, so we're down to our final two questions, and they would be a bit obvious, but we ask them of every author who comes on Read for Pixels anyway. So you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. Now, why do you support the cause to end violence against women? And what do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
I mean, I stand behind it because I'm a human who doesn't want other humans to hurt at all or to be trapped in these places of abuse and fear and pain. As a feminist, it's my heart's desire to see other women safe and protected and empowered. And so it's just a no-brainer for me to support this initiative. And I think I recognize that there are very real impediments to getting out of situations of abuse, whether it's financial, logistical, it's children, it's legalities. It's just not as easy as, oh, someone's hurting me, I'm going to walk out the door. So, supporting an organization that's doing so much to make tangible resources ready for victims of domestic abuse is, again, just, of course, I want to support that. And then in terms of what romance writers can do, I think we need to keep telling stories that celebrate healthy relationships, that acknowledge the real damage that a lot of patriarchal indoctrination and misogyny and internalized misogyny has done to all genders, to people of all ages. And that's going to perpetuate and continue unless we challenge it. And I think we have a unique opportunity in writing a genre that focuses on relationships with oneself, with family, friends, a romantic partner. We have a unique opportunity to show people confronting these cultural narratives, these internalized messages and beliefs about themselves and their world, and to show people aspiring toward greater mental health, emotional health, to champion therapy, to champion support, to champion, particularly men seeking support and healthier outlets for their feelings and their emotions and being safe to process those, and portraying strong sisterhood and women uplifting other women. I just think we have a chance here to keep building a story for us culturally that hopefully infuses and fundamentally shifts how we think about our relationships to each other in a way that moves away from toxicity and toxic masculinity and violence.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me that when we get Viggo's book, we'll see how that plays out because he's such a huge romance reader.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick myself back on screen. Hi, everyone. I'm that disembodied voice who's been having a discussion with Chloe just now. And thank you so much for attending today's session. Now, if in case you missed the start of today's discussion, we're excited to let you know that Chloe has not only generously spent the time with us today, but also donated a few super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats that we have up as perks for donors on the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. Now, first of all, is this humongous and gorgeous bundle. It's all the Bergman Brothers books, and Chloe will sign and personalize them for you. And these are all first edition paperbacks. And it's for one donor anywhere in the world who loves stories with happily ever afters and who wants to finish reading a book with a smile on your face, because that is guaranteed with Chloe's books. So this bundle includes 8 books. Includes Only When It's Us, Always Only You, Ever After Always, With You Forever, Everything for You, If Only You, Two Wrongs Make a Right, which is coming, and the Mistletoe Motive, which maybe you should reserve for the holiday season this year, because that would be just perfect reading. And also, if you are a budding romance author, Chloe's offering a critique bundle. And the bundle includes 1 critique of the first chapter of a romance whip, 1 critique of a query letter draft, because as we were mentioning earlier, query letters are tricky. They're really tricky because you got to make an impression in 1 page. And a follow-up email of 3 to 5 questions from the donor once the donor has gone through the written critique and comments, that you can, get some clarification or any further answers you need, 3 to 5 questions. Please note that this is for English language romance works only. We do have one that's for Spanish and English language writers by Romina Garber. You can just go to Rally Up as well to check that out. And there also, aside from that, there are plenty more goodies available for authors and publishers, including Karen Oden, Sonali Dave, who we had on yesterday, Angela Yuriko Smith, Adibajai Gilda, Carol Goodman, Leanna Renee Heber, Entangled Publishing. Entangled's a huge romance publisher. They've donated a couple of mystery book boxes, everyone. So one of the boxes is already up. It's got 10 books, I think, if I remember correctly, and it's a huge mix of all different types of romance. So if you're looking for great reads this summer, that would be it. And I'm gonna put this on screen. Is this gonna work? Okay, you see that, Chloe? Okay, so now we have had a very slow start to our fundraiser this year. We've only raised $970 so far towards our $5,000 goal. It's a really modest goal because I'm going to tell everyone now. All of us who work on the Pixel project, we are all volunteers. So all the funds raised just goes towards the expenses we need to have tools like StreamYard, which we're using now to host live stream sessions and teaching sessions and so on, educational sessions and so on. So your donations will go towards stuff like that. And so please give generously before the fundraiser ends on 15 April. All funds go towards our programs. Now, you can donate to get these goodies on Rally Up. All you need to go to tinyurl.com/R4P Rally Up IWD 2023. This is case sensitive, everyone. So make sure you get the exact, type it in exactly. And Xiaoxin, who's over in the YouTube chat box, is also sharing the link with you, so you can click on that to directly go to the fundraising page. Now, if you want to learn more about the Read for Pixels program, just type in bit.ly/read4pixels. Again, this is case sensitive. And you can go there to browse, look up we've hosted more than 200 authors over the last 10 years. So you can just go browse their bios, click on the links under their bios to go see their recorded Read for Pixels sessions. Now, we have another special thing to tell all of you about. The Pixel Project's Shirley Jackson Award nominated and Audie Award nominated first charity anthology, Giving the Devil His Due, where the Twilight Zone meets Promising Young Woman, is now available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook editions. It is available for order from major booksellers worldwide, including Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Book Depository, and more. And you can get more information about the anthology if you type in bit.ly/giving the devil his due, again, case sensitive. And if you are totally into audiobooks, we have a special announcement. We're excited to let y'all know that we are currently having a special International Women's Day deal. You can download the book from audiobook retailers worldwide, including Spotify, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, etc., for just $8 until the 18th of March. You can get it from Kobo and Chirp as well. And for more information about the audiobook, please visit tinyurl.com/GTDHD audiobook R4P, again, case sensitive. And for paperback fans, we have teamed up with 12 of the 16 authors to offer an exclusive limited edition anthology bookplate for paperback buyers. So each author will sign a bookplate for you. They only have 16 bookplates available. So it'll be first come and first served. And each bookplate includes a resource for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors in 205 countries worldwide. So again, go to the tiny URL, GTDHD audiobook R4P link, and you can go find out more about that. And again, all net proceeds from the book, whether it comes from the paperback, ebook, or audiobook, it all goes towards supporting our anti-violence against women work. Now, to put this back on the screen. Now, if you want to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, or if you need to get help, please go to the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. We have loads of stuff there. We have, if you're a teacher or a parent and you want to talk to your kids about it, we have primers introducing the different types of violence against women on our website. If you need a helpline, you can go to the resources section, or you can email us at info@thepixelproject.net to ask. If you're not sure what to do, just email us and we'll try to help you and help connect you, give you the information you need to get connected with people on the ground where you are who can actually help you in person. So before we go, Chloe has an announcement, I think. You have a new book coming out soon, Chloe.
Oh, yes. So for fans of the Bergman series, the next one, If Only You, is Ziggy Bergman's book. That is out April 11th, a month away. And then the next book after Two Wrongs Make a Right, Better Hate Than Never, which is about Bia's sister, Kate, and loosely engages the themes of Taming of the Shrew, is Better Hate Than Never, coming October 10th. So those are my books to keep an eye out for.
Oh, we're really looking forward to Ziggy's book.
Thank you.
We met Ziggy quite a lot in the previous books, so let's see how it goes. Isn't that Ziggy going to be doing fake dating or something?
It's a fake friendship.
Fake friendship?
Mm-hmm. It's a publicity stunt. So they pretend they're going to pretend to be friends, but then they become real friends, and then they become something more.
That's going to be so cute. Okay, so everyone, so thank you all for being with us today, with Chloe and us today. Just remember again, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, if you need help, please do contact us or go to our website, and there's loads of information there. Or if you're on Twitter, if you're still on Twitter, we are the only nonprofit that tweets out helplines to 205 countries worldwide every day. It's not exactly 205 tweets because that would totally overwhelm everybody, but there are links to resources that can get you helplines in your country there. Resources from the UN Women, resources from major anti-violence against women organizations in different countries. So do check us out there. So thank you all for joining us today, and have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world, and a good start to your coming week.